You are listening to the Bases Juiced podcast with John Source and Brian Goudsworth.
And welcome back to the Bases Juiced podcast. John Source with Brian Goudsworth here on June 12th, 2016, a couple days after the MLB draft is wrapped up. Actually, yesterday was the final day of the draft, but plenty going on around the league. And Brian, we're going to start with a relatively local team here in the East. And Baltimore Orioles is a team that's really had a nice season so far, tied for first place with the Boston Red Sox, a team that everyone's talking about, the Red Sox offense and, how hot they've been most of the season, but the Orioles have very quietly hung in there all season up to this point.
Yeah, they have hung in there with a great lineup that's hit a ton of home runs. They're near the top of the majors in home runs hit this year. They have a starting rotation that hasn't been great this year, although it's gotten a very good year out of Chris Tillman. I believe he's 8 or 9-1 already this season. But, besides looking at the lineup, which hits the ball out of the ballpark and has put up a lot of runs, their bullpen has been terrific all season, especially the guys at the back end. And the closer, Zach Britton's been terrific, and certainly a familiar name for you, and Brad Brock, who is a former Monmouth Hawk, who's had a very nice year too. So they've done a very good job.
Chris Tillman 8-1 on the season, and that's kind of been the thing with them is every year it's kind of like, are they going to get the starting pitch and they have the offense? It's always a question about the rotation, and like you mentioned, the bullpen's been it's been the best in all baseball so far this season, and everyone knows, Zach Britton, everyone knows Darren O'Day, who's on a disabled list right now, but you mentioned Brad Brock. This is a guy who, and you're right, for me personally, it's really cool to watch because I actually wrote a feature on him last winter. 5-1, ERA's 1.08 now, just got over one. He was 5-0. He must have lost the game.
Gave up a walk-off homer yet in Encarnacion Friday night.
Right, so against Toronto there. But again, he's been in these high-leverage situations now with the eighth-inning guy with O'Day out on the shelf. Has 2 saves, 33 in the third innings, 38 strikeouts. And I read something on ESPN saying Brad Brock, the most underrated reliever in baseball, which was cool to read. And I remember in that article reading Buck Showalter saying that it's tough for me not to use him every day because he can pitch every day. He can pitch him in so many different situations, and it's just really cool to see.
Yeah, and prior to giving up the home run that we just mentioned to Encarnacion, which won the game for Toronto on Friday night, he had an ERA under 1. So, the guy was just pitching lights out, in addition to the other guys, Britton and Dylan Bundy, who's now in the bullpen, and another hard thrower, Michael Givens. They have a lot of depth in that bullpen, and Brock has certainly been a big part of it.
Brock and Michael Givens are combined for 10-1 on the season, ERA in the ones, and they're making under $2 million combined. So in an era where the bullpens are important, and we're seeing this, we saw this with Kansas City, we saw the Yankees try and do this offseason, bring in Chapman to go up Betances and Miller. The Orioles have these guys that are not making that much money. The Royals, Kelvin Herrera was that guy. Greg Holland, when he was healthy, was that guy. Now they're going through arbitration, getting more expensive. But I remember talking to Brad when I was interviewing him for the article I wrote, and I asked him about the importance of the bullpen, and he said absolutely seeing these teams go on runs. And Brad saw him with the Orioles. They saw Kansas City in the ALCS in 2014, and he said that it felt like, if you didn't have a lead after the 6th inning, the game was over because they just kept running these guys out there, and it ends up being the case because Kansas City ended up sweeping that series. But for the Orioles now to be doing this with unheralded names, with Brock, Givens, and like you said, Dylan Bundy now in the bullpen, to go with O'Day and Britton, it just shows you how important it really is. And Brad did say he would like to get a chance to close games at some point. He could definitely do that. I think he's got closer stuff, so it's good to see some of these guys who are not household names getting the recognition that they deserve. And ironically, like Brian touched upon, Brad Brock, former Monmouth University Hawk, which is where I go to school right now, want to congratulate current Hawk Anthony Civarella, who was drafted yesterday actually by the Cardinals in the 24th round. Senior left-hander, had a nice year for the Hawks this year. Was actually, I remember reading earlier this year, was the second best draft prospect out of the MAC, the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference, and he gets drafted by a pretty good organization for pitchers to go. So Civarella to the Cardinals, and it's good to see some of these Monmouth Hawks in the pros. So talking about Civarella with the Cardinals, let's go over to the NL Central now, Brian. And I'll be the first to admit, before the season, I wrote this long thing called Easy on the Cubs Kool-Aid. Now, I had the Cubs missing the playoffs. Now, was that crazy, insane? It probably was, but thing with baseball and thing with making these predictions is there's always going to be some crazy thing to happen. And maybe this was a little too extreme because obviously the Cubs, I think, are a safe bet to make the playoffs, even though it's June at 42-18. I mean, my goodness. They're going to win this division. I was wrong, obviously. But you have the Cardinals and you have the Pirates, who are two teams that have kind of been up and down this year, but I think are still very capable of making runs here.
Yeah, I mean, the NL Central is interesting. The Cubs right now are on a pace to break the win record in the regular season, something like 116, 117 wins they're on a pace for. They actually lost Friday night to the Braves, which was quite a shocker, but then they bounced back yesterday with Jake Arrieta on the mound. You didn't think they would lose two straight Arrieta starts, so he got back on the horse, as did the Cubs with an 8-2 win yesterday. The amazing thing about this team is, before we touch on the Pirates and Cardinals, we'll talk about the Cubs, is everyone looks at this lineup and says that's the big reason why they are where they are. The starting pitching staff right now has the best ERA by far in the National League. The Mets are second, but it's at least a half a run worse than what the Cubs have brought. It's not just Arrieta, it's John Lester, who pitches today, has been brilliant. Kyle Hendricks, I mean, nobody really knows anything about this guy. He's got an ERA under 3. John Lackey, I mean, my gosh, has he turned it around after a couple of bad years in Boston. You know, he got with St. Louis, which we talked about how great of an organization they are, and has completely turned it around, has put together another great year there. And Jason Hamill, the other veteran in the rotation, has been outstanding all season as well. So while everyone can look at the lineup, and you got 4 infielders right now that are leading the NL All-Star voting, which is ridiculous in its own right, but it's the starting pitching right now that's leading the way for this team that's 42-18 right now.
Yeah, and I looked at the starting pitching staff at the beginning of the season, and I really didn't think it was very good, to be honest with you. I mean, can Arrieta do it again?
He's proven he can.
I didn't think so. I think a lot of people didn't think so, but 10-1, 1.86 ERA, I mean, come on now. These are video game numbers he's putting up now. It's remarkable how he's turned his career around. After him, I really didn't think the rotation was very good. I thought Lester saw us better days behind him. I thought Lackey wasn't going to be the same guy out of St. Louis. They've both proven me wrong. I didn't think Jason Hamill was anything special, or Kyle Hendricks, and again, these guys have been excellent at the back end of the rotation, so definitely something I will not deny saying. I had the Cubs missing the playoffs this year. Sometimes you got to make some bold predictions here and go off the map. This was one of my more crazy ones, and I can say I was wrong here. So, and you know what? I'm excited to see what they can do, because if they do win the World Series this year, which I think everyone early on was jumping on there and wanted to see it happen, but obviously the talent is there. If not this year, I think at some point with this group, I think it's going to get done.
Yeah, I mean, they're loaded. We talk about the pitching staff, the lineup, oh yeah, it's not too shabby as well, and some of the guys haven't even really gotten going. I mean, Rizzo, for his standards, has kind of had a quiet year. He's driven in a lot of runs, but he hasn't hit for a great average. Addison Russell hasn't yet to come into his own. Zobrist has been very consistent all year long. Chris Bryant hit a bunch of home runs, but the big free agent acquisition in Hayward has been a bust so far. Fowler's been very good. Of course, they lost Kyle Schwarber, but they just keep plugging in guys. Soler comes in, gets hurt. They bring up Albert Almora, another former first-round pick, comes in and plays a little bit. They just have so many pieces that Joe Madden can mix and match, and it's just all worked so well for them.
Now we talk about, obviously, things are going well with the Cubs. You have the Pirates and the Cardinals now who are battling it out in the big series in Pittsburgh this weekend. Cardinals are 34-28, Pirates are 32-30. These are two teams that have been very good, generally speaking, the past couple of years. Last year, St. Louis won 100 games. The Pirates won 98 games. This year, it kind of seems like these teams are taking a step back, Brian.
Well, right now, the Pirates have a couple of issues to deal with. Garrett Cole, their ace pitcher, left his last start. It's a triceps injury. He's expected to miss time, so that's certainly a blow to a rotation that hasn't been great at all this season. And they've lost, one of their good players, their catcher, Francisco Cervelli, 4 to 6 weeks to a broken hand. Chris Stewart, and they did make a move to bring in Eric Kratz, but that's not a very formidable 1-2 punch behind the plate. And Cervelli's a guy who hits in the clutch. He's so much a part of what they do in their lineup. They're going to miss him a lot. And to go now with a rotation without its ace pitcher, it's a Pirates team that's sort of sinking. And not to mention, Andrew McCutchen, who's supposed to be a superstar, is hitting .245. He has not had any kind of a hot streak all season long. So right now, the Pirates are sort of slipping here in the NL Central, while the Cubs are off and flying, and the Cardinals playing their best ball the last week or so.
Well, you mentioned the pitching set for the Pirates that's kind of been struggling. Generally speaking, you take anybody off the street, it seems like, and go put him under Ray Searage, and he's going to turn him into something that could work, like Francisco Liriano last night. This is a guy who was the opening day starter for the team this year, and he's been, their top guy for the past couple of years. After kind of an up and down, great start with the Twins, had some down years with the injury, goes to Pittsburgh, and the last couple of years has been excellent. This year, 4-6 with a 4.92 ERA. So you mentioned Garrett Cole left his last start with an injury, and obviously you hope it's nothing too serious because he's one of their top guys. And when they're pitching, really a whole lot's not going right for them right now, both the pitching and the offense. And Andrew McCutchen, this guy's as consistent as they come coming into the season. And is it because I have him in fantasy? I don't know what the reason is, but Starling Marte, though, has been the bright spot. Him and Gregory Polanco. This outfield can be the best in baseball with 3 legit center fielders out there covering so much ground. But they're ready to win now, obviously, and they need to get the rest of these guys going. But St. Louis, you said, Carlos Martinez here, 7-5, 3.46 ERA. Wainwright's kind of, trying to get back to what he was off the injury here. So it's tough because these are 2 good teams, and it doesn't look like they're going to get a chance at the division. I wonder if this could potentially be the wild card game, which again, if you're the Pirates, you don't want to be in that situation. Those are 2 teams I still enjoy watching a lot. So
and the Cardinals have a different look to them than when the season started because, of course, Colton Wong optioned to AAA, which came as something of a surprise after he was signed to a pretty lucrative extension to play second base, but just did not get off to a good start. Now he's in AAA. Peralta is back now from the DL and hitting since he's been back. Matt Carpenter has shifted from third base to second base, so they've got a little bit of a different look to them, but they really have played much better lately.
Yeah, when I saw that Wong news that he was sent down, that was definitely surprising to me. But let's switch gears now. We're staying in the NL Central. Team that's kind of in the rut there is Milwaukee. They're playing the Mets. Had a win yesterday, 7-4. Verrett didn't have his best stuff out there. Gave up a couple home runs, 2 to Ryan Braun. Scooter Jeanette went back-to-back with Braun. Gave a home run to Chris Carter, who has 17 home runs. And Willie Peralta went deep, Brian, yesterday.
Yeah, he went deep, and you highlighted it. 5 home runs against Logan Verrett in the Mets bullpen. Not a good day yesterday for them, and they continue to just kind of tread water here with all these injuries. They're really piling up. Now we got Conforto dealing with a wrist issue. Hopefully that's not going to be too serious, but he's out of the lineup today, so you get a nice look at Alejandro De Aza again in left field. And the one positive from the last weekend is Wilmer Flores has gotten a chance to play, and it only makes sense that when you never get a chance to play and you only come up in pinch hitting opportunities, you're going to struggle because this was a guy the last couple of years got used to being an everyday player. Well, now he is again playing third base with the injury to right, and he's really started to hit. And we always know about Wilmer Flores. When he's in the lineup and he's right, he can flat out hit the ball, and he's been doing that of late.
It's definitely good to see Flores get a chance, and I've said this many times, I think third base is where he belongs, and with David Wright now injured, you can hopefully get a look and see if you have some long-term piece there at third base, because as much as we love David Wright, he's not going to be the long-term guy at third base anymore. So one thing I do want to talk about in this series, Brian, is the way the game ended on Friday night. you have extra innings, you have a line drive, bases were loaded, I believe. The guy, I forget who it
Matt
was.
Reynolds.
That's right. Reynolds lines out to short, and VR catches the ball, flips to Scooter Gennett.
Well, he actually dropped the ball.
That's right. He dropped the ball, flipped to Gennett, who stepped on the base for the force out. Then he went back to get the guy towards.
He was
already out on the force play. Got to throw the ball to third base there, and because of that, the run scores. They got one guy out twice, which counts for one out, not two, and go-ahead run scores because of it. That was bizarre.
It was mass confusion. It was funny just to watch Wilmer Flores, who was the base runner at second base, and the ball is hit. He's going back to second base even though the ball was dropped, and then you just see him casually walk over to third, and they don't even make an attempt to try to get him out. As you said, they get the force at second base on Johnson, and then he stays in. He doesn't just walk back to the dugout. That was a savvy move by him to stay on the bases even though he knew he was already out, and they chase him down and get him out twice, but that doesn't matter, as we know, and the Mets score the go-ahead run, win that game 2-1. Certainly a wild scene, and Terry Collins said it was one of the wilder games he had ever been a part of.
Well, I don't know if that was by design by Kelly Johnson, but that was heads-up baseball to force them, to throw over the first base, because that allows it to go-ahead run the score. Now, Kelly Johnson, Brian, this was a guy who the Mets traded for a season ago for some depth, let him go as a free agent, and now they get him back from the Braves, and they give up Akil Morris, who's an intriguing relief for him. I know a lot of Mets fans were saying they need some pieces here, some more bats in the lineup, some more depth with the injuries that they have, and they go bring back a familiar face. What did you make of that move?
Yeah, well, it was a little curious to me. I mean, yes, he's playing for the Braves, so there's not exactly a lot of motivation to up your game, so to speak, but he's hitting about .215, and, to give up someone who instantly became the Braves' 21st ranked prospect, according to what I read from Ken Rosenthal, I was a little bit surprised that they did make that move. Yes, they needed depth, and they needed another bat and someone they can fill in to play some of the infield positions, but was I excited about it? I would have to say no, I really wasn't.
Now, you brought up Akil Morris instantly into the Braves farm system on MLB Pipeline. He is their 21st best prospect, and what is widely considered to be the best farm system in all of baseball. And I know Mets fans are going to think about his debut in Toronto, where he gave up those runs and the ERA of over 100. But first of all, you can't judge a player on one game.
Well, and he was called up from either it was Double-A or High A ball. I mean, it's not like he was even in Vegas when they brought him up at the time.
Yeah, I believe it was from St. Louis, from High A, and they sent him back down to Binghamton after that. And I think he could be a piece for the Braves in their bullpen going forward. So it was intriguing that that's the guy that the Mets decided to part ways with. The Mets are really duking it out with the Nationals, which looks like that's going to be the case all year long.
It does. I mean, both teams are very good. Clearly, the Nationals have benefited from a managerial change with Dusty Baker taking over, but they've gotten a lot of guys to play up to their potential, and the number one guy that stands out is Steven Strasburg. I mean, we kind of been waiting for the kind of year that he's had this year for the last 5 years, since he came up and burst onto the scene with that great debut that was like the most anticipated debut maybe in history against the Pirates back then. But he kind of quietly is 10-0 with an ERA right around 3. Their whole pitching staff has done a really good job, and yeah, I mean, they're 14 games over 500. The battle with the Mets is going to be ongoing, as you said, I expect all the way through the season, and it should be fun to watch them battle it out the rest of the way.
Like you said, in that debut, which was something that was so highly anticipated, and the fact that he struck out 14 Pirates, albeit not a very good Pirates team, the fact that he dominated in his first game, I think heightened the expectations even higher than they already were. So, and you're right, it's amazing how quietly he's going at this dominant clip after he signed the big extension to forego free agency at the end of the season to stay in Washington for the next 7 years, and it was a surprising move. I really thought he was going to go test free agency, but they have him staying, and obviously so many other pitchers. You have Lucas Giolito waiting in the wings too, so a lot to like in Washington. And I agree. I always thought that when Bryce Harper had that one big year, that's when this team was going to go. But he had that last year, and his team did not go.
Hasn't really done it this year. I mean, he's been kind of quiet the last month. Got off to a rollicking start. You thought, okay, he hasn't missed a beat. He might be on his way to his second straight MVP. But he's kind of cooled off and let everyone else kind of pick up the slack.
You know who the MVP on this team is right now, right?
Daniel Murphy, as we know, has been great from the get-go. I mean, the average has been near 400. He's, around 370. He already has double-digit home runs, too. So, I mean, give him credit. They signed him to a 3-year deal. Clearly, the Mets didn't have a lot of interest in bringing him back, and he's fit in very well in that lineup and done a great job.
And that looks like a bargain, of course. So, again, this is the guy who had his power stretch last year, as we all know, in the postseason, but he's a guy who was never a power hitter all of a sudden, and now he's got double digits already in mid-June.
We always knew he could hit,
Right.
doubles and hit a 300 average, but now he's incorporating the power, and as you said, carrying it over from the postseason last year.
Yeah, so that's very interesting. And good for Murphy. He's a guy who I think Mets fans, I hope, are all rooting for. He's a great guy, and I remember early in his career when he was battling with the injuries and came back and, was one of their top hitters when the Mets were not very good.
Right.
Early in his career. So, likable guy, and he's working hard at second base. So, definitely good to see him contributing, even though it may be tough for Mets fans to see him do it in the uniform of a division rival. So, a lot to look forward to in the NL East. Now, Brian, the Royals won 6 games in a row, and they were on this big stretch that got them back in the first place. We talked about the comeback against the White Sox in our last episode 2 weeks ago. Now, they lost 8 games in a row before they won yesterday, and they were in 4th place. Now they're back in 2nd. But it hasn't been easy to watch, and I'm going to ask you, before we get into the good stuff, the whole Yordano Ventura situation. As a fan, I want to back the kid because he has so much talent and so much ability. And really, before the incidents last season, he really doesn't. It's not like he's done this in the minor leagues where he has a history of being a hothead, before last season. But now, everything he does gets magnified, and the whole thing with Machado now, a lot of people, needless to say, are not very fond of Mr. Ventura. Brian, what's your take?
Well, I mean, it was certainly an unfortunate scene in Camden Yards, a series that the Royals got swept in, midweek this past week. And, the thing is, when you have a history of this kind of behavior, that's when people don't feel sorry for you. If this was a first-time thing and Machado, was upset about getting hit by a 99-mile-an-hour fastball and charged the mound, you wouldn't fault Ventura as much. You'd have more ill will towards Machado. But since Ventura has done this, you remember last year with the White Sox, and he's had a bunch of issues. He hasn't pitched well, as we know. He's got an ERA over 5, and he's throwing inside on Machado. He's one of the best hitters in the game right now, an MVP candidate in the American League. And then the next at bat, he comes up and gets drilled 99 miles an hour. When you already have a history of that, I don't fault Machado for trying to defend himself, and I just don't think there's any place in this game for that kind of thing when you're struggling and you almost take your frustration out by, intending to injure someone else by throwing a fastball. It's, to me, kind of unacceptable, and I was kind of surprised Machado got a 4-game suspension. Now, they're both appealing. Ventura got 9 games, so he'll miss 2 starts if this goes through, whatever it is, and Machado 4. But certainly an unfortunate situation, and as you said, I mean, most baseball fans looking at Ventura faulted him more than Machado, and that's kind of where I stand.
Well, the thing with, and again, we know the past here, but the thing with Ventura is, yes, he hasn't pitched well at all, frankly, this year. He gets the ball today against the White Sox, but the team stance on this is that he needs to pitch inside to be effective, because last year, early on, he kind of got, stopped pitching inside because of what happened early on in the season with the White Sox and the Angels and other incidents that he had, and he was getting hit hard. He wasn't locating, he wasn't coming inside to righties, and that's kind of where he needs to pitch. And we look at this incident, and everyone goes right to Ventura hitting Machado on the first pitch with a 99-mile-an-hour fastball, and that's it. No one looks at the last at bat, when Ventura threw 2 pitches inside, and Machado thought he took him deep, the wind knocked it down. Machado's barking at Ventura as he's walking, down the first baseline, and Ventura doesn't like that. I don't know if he said anything back. There were no camera angles to see that. And Machado, as great as a player as he is, he's had his issues in the past as well with these things. I don't approve of it, obviously. You don't want to see that in the game. Bottom line is that Ventura shouldn't instigate that because he did come at him with the fastball in 99. And the rest, as we know, is history. So if Machado's going to bark at you for throwing inside, let him go and just get him out next time, because that's the best thing to do. As far as the reports out there that the Royals have been looking to trading the guy, number one, the pitching staff has not been very good as it is right now. There's no one really in the minor leagues you can come up. Really, as bad as he's pitching, he has the most upside. He's the same guy who dominated Game 7 in the World Series in 2014, who finished third in the Rookie of the Year that year. So I don't think they're going to trade him right now, quite frankly, because they can't, because they're already thin with starting pitching, and what are you going to get for him right now? So what do you think of that?
Yeah, well, right now, I mean, as you say, the value is not high at all when A, he has these instances with his behavior, and B, his ERA is over 5 and he's getting hit hard and not pitching well. So I think for the time being, you have to keep him on your staff, hope he turns it around. As we know, he has great stuff, throws hard as anybody, great off-speed pitches, and you just have to hope he turns it around and helps out this Royals rotation. I think that's the only answer you can have right now.
Especially with a team that's looking to get back to the World Series and win it with, their window that they have to compete. So there have been reports too that, some of the guys on the team are upset with his immaturity. And look, generally speaking, with the Royals, you don't see this kind of stuff with the guys they bring up. Even through all the years where they were terrible, you don't see guys who test positive for PEDs or have these issues. It's a team that pride themselves on being a family, having a good culture in the clubhouse, and you don't see these things, generally speaking, with guys they develop. And so they need to get him turned around, and for his sake, really, he needs to turn it around. So obviously he's got, like you said, all the talent in the world, but at some point he needs to, get it together and move forward. So one good thing with the Royals, even though of all the losing of late, is the return of Danny Duffy in the rotation. Yesterday, 6 innings, 10 strikeouts, 3 walks. Was in the bullpen earlier this season, but he's come back and made a couple of starts in the rotation and has really been lights out.
Yeah, he's done a very good job. And I mean, right now we talk about the Royals pitching staff, the starting pitching staff, struggling with guys like Kennedy, who haven't been as good of late, Volquez and Ventura, as we've mentioned, and the Chris Youngs and the Dylan G's that have gotten their chances in the rotation. So Duffy has stepped in and done a very good job. I mean, yesterday he's matched up with a very talented left-hander in his own right, and Jose Quintana, who throws a good ball game, strikes out 10 Royals, does give up 3 home runs, 2 of them to Cheslor Cuthbert, who's playing most of the third base these days. But certainly that was a quality outing to go out there, give you the game he did. Now that he's able to go deeper into games, he's not limited by the pitch count like he was when he first entered the rotation, and so give him credit. He's done a very nice job.
And early on in his career, Duffy was a guy who's been plagued by walks and command. But his last couple of starts, he didn't walk anybody until yesterday. He walked 3 guys. So, again, he's a free agent after 2017. But with the struggles that most of these guys have been having, like we said, Ventura, and like you said, Kennedy gave a bunch of home runs the other night to the White Sox, and Volquez has been up and down. And a lot of people looked at this team, didn't see the starting pitching was there. But if Duffy can emerge near the top of the rotation, that's going to be big, but you need these other guys to step up too. They've been largely up and down all season, but I still think this is a team that can win its division.
Alright, so we'll give the scores from Saturday before we get to the preview of today and into Monday. So we'll start with the Mets, who, as we mentioned, lost yesterday to the Brewers 7-4. Mets have taken 2 of the first 3 in that series, but Logan Verrett yesterday gives up 3 home runs. Today we find out he's sent to AAA as they brought back Eric Goodell from Las Vegas. So Verrett demoted. Willie Peralta gets the win, and as we mentioned, hit a home run. What does he get for that? An assignment to AAA himself. So that's the story in that game. Yesterday, the Nationals blanked the Phillies 8-0 behind Tanner Roark, who beat Aaron Nola. Tough day for the Phillies right-hander. And after the Phillies had gotten off to this start where they were surprising everybody, they've kind of become the Phillies that we expected. Now, 4 games under 500, a lineup that doesn't score a whole lot of runs. And as soon as the pitching was going to take a step back, so were the Phillies. And, I mean, no one expected anything from this Philly team this year, so it doesn't come as any kind of a surprise. And the Blue Jays over the Orioles 11-6, kind of a slugfest there. Big day for Encarnacion. Hit the walk-off homer Friday, 2 home runs yesterday, and the Blue Jays have taken 2 of the first 3 of that series. Just another ho-hum performance from the Red Sox. 15 runs on the board. They wallop the Twins 15-4. The story there, Xander Bogaerts, back-to-back 4-hit games. He's now hitting .358 on the season. David Ortiz is hitting close to .350. The lineup top to bottom is scoring runs left and right, and they've just done an unbelievable job all year long. Ratted the Twins yesterday. Mentioned the Royals 4-1 over the White Sox behind Duffy. Cubs got a win with Arrieta on the mound. He goes to 10-1. They beat the Braves 8-2. Astros evened up the series in Tampa Bay at a game apiece. They win 4-3 yesterday behind Mike Fiers. Reds, for the second straight day, beat the A's 2-1. It's been a tough time for the A's. They've lost 4 straight games, just not scoring a lot of runs at all. Cincinnati wins yesterday afternoon. Rockies beat the Padres 5-3. Tyler Chatwood, one of the feel-good stories this year. He's had a very good year and a ballpark that's tough to pitch in. 8-4, 2.89 for the former Angel, who's come into his own this year. Last night, Yankees had their 5-game winning streak come to an end. They lost to the Tigers 6-1. 5 RBIs for Ian Kinsler. Strong game for Verlander. Tanaka gave up a couple of home runs. Giants beat the Dodgers walk-off fashion in 10 innings 5-4. Buster Posey, the RBI single to win it for the Giants in that 10th inning. Cards over the Pirates 5-1 behind Carlos Martinez. Pirates, as we documented, they have issues right now. Liriano took the loss yesterday. Angels over the Indians 4-3. They got a great outing from Matt Shoemaker. Indians tied it up with 3 in the 9th, and the Angels walked off in the bottom of the 9th to even up that series at a game apiece. Diamondbacks beat the Marlins 5-3. That was Fernandez who took the loss, and losses have not been aplenty for him in recent days. He actually was perfect through the first 5 innings and gave up a couple of home runs. Arizona wins 5-3. Texas over the Seattle Mariners in 11 innings 2-1 as Texas got a home run from Rougned Odor in the 11th inning to win and even up that series at a game apiece. And now we'll get to, I guess, the preview for today before we get to Monday. Mets and the Brewers, Steven Matz and Zach Davies. Matz has been very good, 7-2 record. No Neil Walker for the Mets tonight. He left yesterday's game with a separate issue from the chest issue that plagued him the last couple of days. So he's out. No Michael Conforto as well for the Mets this afternoon. Orioles and the Blue Jays today. Aaron Sanchez on the mound for Toronto, and he's been great for them this year, probably their best pitcher. Astros and the Rays play the finale of their series. Dallas Keuchel against Matt Moore. A's trying to avoid a sweep. They're in Cincinnati, and that is Kendall Graveman against John Lamb, the former Royal prospect. Cubs and the Braves, John Lester against the former Met prospect John Gant. They got him for Kelly Johnson and Juan Uribe last year. Tigers and the Yankees starting at 2:05. It's Old Timers Day in the Bronx today. Michael Fulmer, speaking of former prospects, and he's been great. 6-1, 2.83, gets the ball for Detroit against Michael Pineda. Red Sox look for the sweep today in Minnesota. Rick Porcello opposes Pat Dean. Royals are in Chicago taking on the White Sox with the aforementioned Yordano Ventura matching up against Carlos Rodon. Danny Salazar, if you want a dark horse for the American League Cy Young, think of his name. He's had a great year. Opposes David Huff today in LA. Indians and the Angels. Phillies and the Nationals, 4:05 first pitch. Adam Morgan against Joe Ross. Marlins are in Arizona. 2 lefties. Adam Conley against Robbie Ray. The Padres in Colorado taking on the Rockies with the former Rocky Christian Friedrich matching up with Tyler Anderson, who makes his debut. Cole Hamels and Wade Miley, the matchup. Texas battles Seattle. Mike Leake on the mound for the Cardinals in Pittsburgh taking on John Neese. That's a 5:05 first pitch. And Sunday Night Baseball tonight, Julio Urias makes his 4th Major League start and opposes Jake Peavy for the Giants on Sunday Night Baseball.
And for your Monday baseball all-night games, start with the Cubs and the Nationals. Big series there in D.C. Kyle Hendricks, who we talked about before, 4-5 with a 2.90 ERA, going for the Cubs and the Nationals. Well, they haven't decided yet, so to be determined for the Nationals for tomorrow. Phillies and the Blue Jays in Toronto. We have Jared Eichhoff against R.A. Dickey. Reds and the Braves down in Atlanta with Daniel Roy getting the ball for Cincinnati against Aaron Blair for Atlanta. Tigers and the White Sox on the south side of Chicago with Matt Boyd going for Detroit against James Shields for Chicago. Brian, we discussed this last time. James Shields, talked about him going to the White Sox potentially. He did indeed go there, and he kind of got knocked there on his first start.
The first start was about as ugly as you could have. His last start in San Diego was abysmal against the Seattle Mariners. He got just knocked around, gets traded to the White Sox for Fernando Tatis Jr. and pitcher Eric Johnson. And Shields, in his first start, matches up with the Nationals. I think they hit 3 or 4 home runs against him. He didn't get out of the third inning, and certainly was greeted very rudely by the Windy City folks there. So not a good first outing for Shields.
He's now 2-8 on the season with a 5.06 ERA, and I didn't like this fit because he's a fly ball pitcher, and that's a small ballpark. And he gave up a bunch of home runs in his first start. Plus, his stuff is not quite what it was a couple of years ago. So, you love Shields. He's had a great career, but I just don't see the fit. He's got 2 more years left on that deal after this year. So, we'll see how it goes. But not how I don't think how Shields or the White Sox wanted that marriage to start there. 8:15, we have the Indians and the Royals, a big series in Kansas City. Carlos Carrasco against Edison Volquez. Dodgers taking on the Diamondbacks. In Arizona, Mike Bolsinger taking on Zach Greinke, who has turned the corner, it looks like, Brian.
Really turned it around through a shutout his last start against the Rays after just a dreadful start in April. He has looked like the Greinke that everyone expects, and he's been outstanding.
8-3 on the season with a 3.84 ERA up to this point. Other late games for you, we have the Twins and the Angels in Anaheim. Ricky Nolasco against Jared Weaver. The Rangers battle out with the A's in Oakland, to be determined for the Rangers, and Sean Manaea, another former Royals prospect for Oakland. Marlins taking on the Padres in San Diego, Wei-Yin Chen against Colin Ray. And the final game for your Monday night, Brewers taking on the Giants by the Bay in San Francisco. Chase Anderson going up against Matt Cain. So thank you all very much for listening. Look forward to the next episode, and we will talk to you next time.